Good morning. It is 10:30 a.m. UK time. It is Sunday morning, and that means it is time for Sunday Club, which is a weekly live stream that we do every Sunday. And what we do is we take a look at Ruby on Rails, some Ruby on Rails code, and we each week kind of build an app or look at an app together. And what the app does is you can create a user. The user can give the app its YouTube ID and hopefully eventually a Twitch ID. And then it will go and grab all the videos from the channel and make a web page full of those videos that the user can edit. So that's kind of the basic test playground app that we have to work with. And we just kind of look at a different feature of Ruby on Rails each week. So that is where you are and what you're watching right now. Let's do some follow-up / planning. So I don't think we really have any follow-up from last week, certainly none that I can remember. I probably said I would do a bunch of stuff that I probably didn't do. So that's just pretty normal for this stream. Welcome if it's your first time. But what I do want to talk about is the next couple of weeks. So I was giving some thought to what we're looking at this week and kind of what I was interested in. And the thing that I keep coming back to on these streams is actually not Rails related. The thing that I am getting stuck on the most, which is the kind of early interest I had in using Tailwind CSS, and how every time I have come to actually try and do anything on the stream to do with the front end, that's actually been a bit of a blocker because my brain isn't working in the way that Tailwind is. So what I kept saying over and over again was that I would do like a midweek edition of the show when I found some spare time, and would put a design together in Sketch and then kind of come over and build it and see how Sketch worked with Tailwind, and then kind of come over and build it in the app. Now, I'm just not finding the time to do that midweek, just because stuff is going on, and Sundays is kind of the time I reserve for this. So what I'm going to do is just move that to the Sunday episode. So in the next couple of weeks, we're not really going to look at anything in Rails particularly. We're going to do a deeper dive on Tailwind and just working out how to use it, how to set it alongside everything, and build out the UI and make it look nice and things like that. And then that will take us back to the active component, action component, component view component that we looked at weeks ago. Which is kind of GitHub's Ruby-based componentized front-end library thing, and had a really good experience with getting. There's a stream if you go and look back on the channel. Had a really good experience with that, reading the docs, kind of getting it up and running. And I think that it would be a good fit with something like Tailwind, but I'm just not. I haven't spent enough time with the CSS library we're trying to use in this code to actually just kind of quickly get some front-end stuff done. So that is going to be next week, and depending on how we get on, possibly the week after as well. So if you are only ever watching these for Rails and gem-based stuff, just a heads up that it's not going to be very Rails-based. Although hopefully, it still be useful. Like, I'm super interested in that approach, the kind of component-based approach, and how we kind of, where do we need to diverge from Tailwind, and what does it give us versus kind of writing our own? And I think that would depend on whether you're working on a one-person or two-person project versus working at a large company and all of those things. All right, so that's stuff that's coming up. Let's dive into this week's stuff. So I'm going to jump straight over to the browser stuff. So let's jump over here. Last week we looked at Stimulus, super interesting, and it was a dive back in for me because I had read these docs before but couldn't really remember anything about them. And we looked at the build something real and had a couple of kind of like conversations around examples that we had, copying things to the clipboard and things like that. And I was kind of thinking about what we could do for this. And the thing that popped into my mind was ActionText, which I'm going to come on to in a second. But one of the uses that actually popped into my mind during the week was one of the original behaviors in the app that we were looking at. that already did what the Sunday Club app does, and I can't remember what it was called, and I couldn't remember then either. I think it was like a review or something like that. I can't remember, but basically you gave it something like make website from YouTube channel or something, something like that. Yeah, I do remember this. There was loads of like tutorials, but there was a website specifically that did it, and I'll have to go and dig that out. But what they had on the first page was a search function to find your channel, and it was a type head. So as you typed in, it would suggest YouTube channels to you. And I was like, oh, that could be a good use of Stimulus, perhaps. Like we could, Rivet, that was it. Here we go. Cool. I knew we'd find it eventually if I just scrolled long enough. So I think they took it out because I think now this is a request a demo website, like in terms of one of those ones where you can't just sign up. But previously you could just sign up, because I have an account here, and you could start typing the name of your channel and it would go and look for ones that were related. So maybe we could build that in Stimulus if we don't get anything working with ActionText. So that's where we're gonna start. All right, so we looked at Stimulus last week, and I wanted to take a look at ActionText. So ActionText is a rich text editor for Rails and built into Rails. And it uses Tricks, which is the name of the editor that it uses. So it has like bold and italics and underline and all of those things. And why are we going to do this? Well, the use case I thought would be interesting is if this is the very rough view. Remember, I just said we need to actually build the front end for this of a channel. So you can see that each of these is an individual video on this channel. And we've retrieved the description for it as well. Well, they look horrible, but what you can also do is administrate them. So this is the control panel. Again, no user interface here. But this is the control panel for editing the channel, basically, and editing each video. So you can click edit for that video, and you can change the title, and you can change the description. And a few weeks ago, we added ActiveStorage. Last week? No, week before last, we added ActiveStorage, so you can replace the thumbnail video, the thumbnail image, sorry, that's here. So when we retrieve all of the information from YouTube, we just take everything that YouTube gives us, and then we want the person administrating the service on this side to be able to control how that video actually appears here, and then when they can still just embed the YouTube video if they click on it. So what ActionText does is give us a rich text editor. When we click edit here, instead of just getting a text box, what we want is a rich text editing experience. And we're going to go and see if we can get that working. And then hopefully if we can get Stimulus something in there, there might be some stuff around like hooks that they give us on the editing experience to let us do stuff. I haven't actually used it, so we're going to find out. So we're going to run through this together. What is ActionText? ActionText brings rich text content and editing to Rails. It includes the Tricks editor that handles everything from formatting to links to quotes to lists to embedded images and galleries. Embedded images is what I'm interested in because we have ActiveStorage already, and I think they work together. So that I'm really interested in that and how that works with uploads and things like that. Maybe for like maybe putting it to an S3 bucket or another cloud provider. The rich text content generated by, let me just check. Yep, sorry, I'm just checking the stream is up and running and okay. The rich text content by the Tricks editor is saved in its own rich text model that's associated with any existing active record model in the application. Any embedded images or other attachments are automatically stored using ActiveStorage, great, and associated with the included rich text model. So if you remember when we were looking at the ActiveStorage stuff, unlike Paperclip or other gems, instead of modifying the record that you were adding the image to, like the table, so let's say that you had a user and you wanted to add a profile photo, by default what Paperclip would do is add 3 extra columns to that table. It was like the file name, the file size, and something else, I can't remember. And what ActiveStorage does as a default is has two extra tables, which is the blob, which is like the metadata basically around the file. And then it had, what was the other one? I can't remember. Like the actual record itself. Yeah, I can't remember because it doesn't store the actual binary in the database. I don't think. No, it just generates a path. It stores a blob and something else that I can't remember from the other week. But we can take a look in. Oh, actually, I just committed that before this episode, so we can take a look in Git. Install here. So change the schema. So as ActiveStorage blob and ActiveStorage attachment, which is the name record blob created at. Okay, so yeah, it doesn't store a lot, just references the blob mainly. Cool, okay, fair enough. And so it sounds like in this paragraph here, what ActionText is doing is the same thing. It's basically saying we're gonna have a separate model that represents any rich text, and then we're just gonna associate it rather than storing it on the model. I'm not sure, but that seems to be what that's indicating. Tricks compared to other rich text editors. Yeah, so I think we touched on this at the end of last week's stream because this is like the history of how this ended up happening. So there was a bunch of legacy stuff that was an issue with previous WYSIWYGs. Trix sidesteps these inconsistencies by treating content editable as an I/O device. When input makes its way to the editor, Trix converts that input into an editing operation on its internal document model, then re-renders that document back into the editor. This gives Trix complete control over what happens after every keystroke and avoids the need to use exec command at all. Okay, I'm going to kind of skip over that stuff. If you're more interested in that, I remember looking into that when I used Trix the first time. But like any WYSIWYG editor, it's not all sunshine and lollipops. All WYSIWYG editors, when they get into the hands of users, you can create funky stuff. Copy and paste is usually a pain in the bum. Okay. So let's do the installation. Run bin rails ActionText install to add the yarn package and copy over the necessary migration. Also, you need to set up ActiveStorage for embedded. Okay, so we've already done that. That's great. Okay, so because we've already done that, this should hopefully be pretty painless. Let's give this a go. Okay, so it's doing some stuff. So what have we got? We've got styling, tests. Oh, it's going away. Tests. Blob. It's got a blob, which is adding it to ActiveStorage. Interestingly. Because it needs a view to render it, I assume. Installing JavaScript dependencies. Oh, that's actually running yarn install for us. It's doing its thing. It's adding Rails ActionText and then Trix, and it's done. Then it's appending some code to application.js. It's adding the Trix code and then adding Rails ActionText to application.js. So let's then copy the migration over. So we can then just jump back into our editor, see what's changed. We can close commits, close these files. Okay, so we can see what's new here. We can ignore the devise and the yt.rb because they're just left over from previous change. They're just changes that I'd left open. So everything else is new. So we've got new files in our package.json. I'm going to have to just bump this font size down a little bit just to make this a bit more readable. I'll try and pull this over to the left as well. So we've got ActionText and Trix added here. Sunday.jpg is from us previously. That the yarn.lock is from those changes in the package.json. So here we've got our styling for Trix content. So this is doing some stuff to make sure that attachments are laid out nicely. And obviously we can come in and mess with this as much as we want. Provides a drop-in pointer for the default tricks style sheet that will format the toolbar and the tricks editor content. Feel free to incorporate this inclusion directly in any other asset bundle and remove this file. Require tricks dist tricks. We need to override tricks' CSS image gallery styles to accommodate the ActionText attachment element we wrap around attachments. Otherwise, images and galleries will be squished by the max width 33% rule. Okay, so we're just hoping that will all work. We can come and mess with that as much as we want. And then in our application.js, let's see what we've got in here already. So UJS ActiveStorage. Channels. So ActiveStorage from ActiveStorage. Channels was from either Action Cable or... oh no, it's there from the default. Maybe that is to enable Action Cable in the default. Default application CSS. Tricks and ActionText there. Okay, great. What does blob do? If blob is representable. So this all goes back to a couple of weeks ago when we were this is the ActiveStorage API. So representable, if you remember, there was like every ActiveStorage attachment was either like an image or everything else. And I think there was then like representable was like, can you view this somehow? And if it was an image, it would show you the image. And if it wasn't, it would show you something else. And there were built-in ones for like PDF. And if you installed some extra software, you could actually get a preview of the PDF, I think. Again, there's a stream on, obviously you can jump to the docs for that. So if it's representable, then show it in an image tag, or maybe only images are representable. Oh no, I see. Sorry. So if it's representable, you can represent it as an image, and then you can go and get the representation. So that might be a preview of a PDF just as an image. Then a caption. It's got a caption to show it, and if it hasn't, get the file name and the size. Fair enough. Again, you can mess with this. Cool. Those are our files. This is the migration. So what have we got being added here? Action text, rich texts, name, body, the association, and the timestamps. That's it. These are all like these are all fairly straightforward. I mean, like I said, I was working on a project where when we were doing ActiveStorage stuff, I'd worked on a project that used paperclip, but essentially used it in the same way as ActiveStorage ended up doing it. We had a model that was everything that ever needed a file just was a polymorphic association to that one giant table. So although these are, if you're kind of newer, maybe a bit scary, the implementation is hopefully fairly straightforward under the hood. As once you've got the associations and you're comfortable with that, I guess it is slightly more complex. You're like, well, there's, I've got in this app a video, and I've got a description attribute, which is a record in the database. So the idea of just moving the rich text version of that to some other record for no particular reason. I mean, obviously there is a good reason, but if you're a beginner, I could see that being quite confusing. So hopefully the fact that there's not a huge amount of fields on this table makes that easier to kind of process. And we also end up with a YAML file, which is all commented out. What is this? Rich text YAML 1 record, name a fixture, content in 1,000,000 stars. Okay, that's interesting. It's just the. Oh, I say it's just the test fixture. Sorry, I didn't look at where that was. I wondered if it was like a locale thing, and you could localize the labeling on the attachments. The rich text attachments. Okay, so that is up and running. Cool. Everything makes sense there. So we want to run the migration. Great, so we've got our create action text tables. ActionText, this is still in our installation docs. ActionText uses polymorphic relationships with the ActionText rich text tables, so it can be shared with all models that have rich text attributes. If your model with ActionText content uses UUID for identifiers, all models that use ActionText attributes will need to use UUID. The generated migration for ActionText will also need to update it to specify UUID. So we haven't done that, so ours are just they're just integers in ours. After the installation is complete, a Rails app using Webpack should have the following changes. Well, we've just looked at these, so we don't need to. This was handled via the. Just looking at this one. This wasn't our import, but I'm assuming that's because. It's a require here, which is the app, because that's in app assets. So that's the Sprocket's way of doing it, as opposed to the Webpack way of doing it. Okay, still can't remember. I think the app that we're working on is a halfway house between the two, which is probably not great. All right, let's see if we can do this. So, add a rich text field to an existing model. Has rich text content. Well, we want to add ours to a video, so let's just go over there and do that. Cool, so this is our has one attached custom thumbnail, which is pretty straightforward to add. And so we have has rich text, and we kind of have a choice. We have an attribute at the moment, which is description, I think. And I'm assuming what we could do is start saving when we import the video from YouTube. We can immediately start importing that content into the rich text editor. And if you remember, we also have a couple of streams where we've got Papertrail running, where we looked at version control or kind of auditing or revision, whatever you want to call it, for this model. So as we save attributes to it, we actually get a changed version. I don't think we turned on the associations for that. So I think if we add rich text editing to this, we might break that version control because we would only be changing the rich text model, which remember is an association now, or will become an association. Whereas when we're changing description, we do get a new version. So that would be something to consider if you're implementing rich text later. But you've also got version control. What happens if you change the rich text model? Because it's an association. How do you want that to happen? How are you going to control those versions? So we have a super simple app that only has a few things added to it. And already we're bumping into ideas where as you add in some cool new functionality, you immediately have 3 or 4 things to consider that you didn't when you had a nice simple life. And that's only one decision to make on one feature for one model. So in these early phases, you can start to already see how you build complexity up that will then not, it won't bite you. There's nothing wrong with that. But you have to deal with it. You suddenly have to think about it, which you if we didn't have any auditing gem on this model, you wouldn't have to think about it. You're just like, oh, who cares? You just press save and it'll save the association. So let's just call this rich description just to get this moving. So we have description, which is powering, if you remember, this text here, and when you come to the control panel and edit it, it's this this text here. So we can cancel out with that. It's this. These are ordered differently. I think this is literally the other end. Yes, we can order them so they're both at the top. Actually, let's do that now, so they're the same order. So when we remember, one is the actual view of the YouTube channel in our app. Very ugly because it's not styled, and one is the control panel where we administrate that channel. So one would be, well, actually we can do that in the controller. So one is it's probably the sites controller, I would imagine. Or is it, no, it's the channel is the controller. And we must have channel show. Okay, so we're just doing channel.videos.each And we're just spitting out this. And then on our control panel, we are doing control panel channels. And here we're assigning it to a video. We have channel.videos.order, and we're doing by the order that they were updated. So let's just make them look the same. I know this isn't actually sensible because you wouldn't want the users to see something. We could do by created, I guess. That would be the same. Let's do both as created at. Although if they were imported in the other order, published out would probably be something more sensible, but whatever. I'm just so that the control panel one and the one line up. So I'm going to pull channel.videos.each, channel.videos.order, and that's now at videos. I'm just doing an instance variable assignment here. That means that in the view we can then swap out channel.videos. Oops, I'm really doing that twice. Yep. And we can just swap that for at videos and everything should stay the same. So we can then refresh the version that the user would see. I think that Webpack is doing its 20-minute refresh. It's doing something. Yep, there we go. Something's happening. So here we've got implementing active job at the top, and then on this one, got coding Rails new. Oh, is that because I'm looking at site show rather than channel show? Yes. Okay. So just actually can I just change this? Can this just be channels 23? I'm not actually sure if I've finished any of these views. Again, this is why next week we're just going to do UI stuff. We're going to do it in the Sunday episodes. We're not going to do Rails stuff. Cool. Okay, so at the top here we have ribbon Rails coding Rails new, ribbon Rails coding Rails new, and so they should roughly stay in the right order because I won't change that. Cool. And I've forgotten what we were doing. Right, so now we have this thing called rich description. So let's just go back to our docs for a second. You don't need to add a content field to your messages table. Yep, so that's all just magic. So we've added rich description here, and what it's saying is we don't need to add a field called rich description. That's just going to be handled by magic because it knows that has rich text is going to be handled by the gem. Then refer to this field in the form for the model. Right, then finally display a sanitized rich text on a page. This has been as easy so far as ActiveStorage was. So let's go and change this in control panel views. And if you remember a few streams ago in the control panel, we had the video form partial is where we use turbo frames to swap out. We click edit and it swaps out the partial, just the kind of show partial for this edit partial, for this form partial. And so here we added custom thumbnail. So what we can do is we can add description. And if we just duplicate it, we can here do F rich text area, and it's not content, it's rich description. Oops. Rich description. So what that means is if this is as straightforward as the ActiveStorage one was, I shouldn't even have to refresh the page because when I click edit, it should still do a server request even though it won't refresh this entire page. Grab that partial and we should have hopefully a rich text editor come back. But I don't know if I had to restart the server to make this work. Yes, okay. I think we have to restart the server to make it work because we have something is happening here, but I don't think it's styled correctly. Either that or that CSS import isn't coming through. So let's restart the server first. If in doubt, when you're installing something in Rails, restart the server. And then I'm happy this fixes it because I don't really want to. Oh no. the CSS is not coming through. Okay, cool. So I did wonder what was happening there. Okay, so let's go look at the changes that have been made, and it's presumably something on the tricks editor side. So there's a bunch of stuff here that's for tricks. And so this should all be getting styled. Okay, so we actually have the functionality working. Amazing. So again, it looks horrible, but you can actually see that that is strike through there. And then if I do bold, you can see that that's being bolded and italicized. Functionality is working. Amazing. So we're obviously just missing the built-in tricks styles to get this little row of buttons, functionality buttons, presumably positioned at the top of that little editor. So let's go and see if we missed a step from installation. So it said this should all happen automatically. This happened. The trick style sheet should be imported into ActionText.scss. ActionText.scss. Okay, do we then need to go and ActionText? So this is at require here. Is this not happening? This was the line we got to earlier. Provide a drop-in pointer for the default. So if we had this. So this is are we just not calling ActionTest.scss? Is that the issue? So if we are doing require tree, so this should be getting pulled in. Like, could we do something here? I basically just want to know if this file, let's pull that out because we don't know what it's doing. Is this file being called in at all? So I just want to set something garish and just see if this is happening, because that should override everything else and we should know. So no, I don't think that's being called. So let's restart the server and just see if that's because it needs to get it, but I don't think that's how. I just don't think we're using this. I think we're using the this instead. So can we put it in here? Okay, so we are waiting for something. Something's happening. It's refreshed. Ah, okay, great. That has worked. Okay, so let me just run through what has happened there. And this got mentioned and asked about in this live stream where we did this installation stuff of Webpacker. I wonder if we can just remove assets style sheets altogether. Like, is application.css being called at all? So this needs to go into here. And also called, I assume. And then everything should go red. Sorry, I'm just going to have to sneeze. Okay, so this is the asset pipeline versus Webpacker for handling asset compilation. So that's JavaScript, CSS, and assets, images, files, things like that. And yep, this is now gone red. So basically, we switched to using Webpack and Webpacker for our CSS work so that we could get Tailwind working. But Rails often defaults to using the asset pipeline, which is in the assets directory, as opposed to the JavaScript directory. Now, I think what I did was pull the line from the head that references application.css. So it's no longer trying to generate that file, or even if it is, it then never actually gets used. So that's why I had to go and grab the imports and put it in our application.scss in JavaScript style sheets rather than in assets style sheets. And then pulling ActionText in to be included within that. So within application.scss, I then added in import ActionText and added it in here. So we can now pull out this background color red because this CSS now exists within here. This style of import won't work here. This will just be read as a comment because that is an asset pipeline style import. Now, this is all incredibly confusing, I think, for new Rails users to have these like multiple methods of doing asset compilation. And I also, people were talking in the chat on that stream as to like what people prefer, what's going to happen. I kind of had assumed that once it was up and running, because everyone else is running in that direction, that Webpack was going to be the way forward. But there seems to be a definite a few things I've seen on Twitter or in GitHub and places like that, where because some of the stuff that Webpack gets you is potentially not needed in the future as browsers start to fill in that functionality, potentially a move back to the asset pipeline and still doing things in Ruby is preferred. So I wonder where we will end up on that. But anyway, this worked, but I think would have been more confusing had we not already had that understanding. So I think if we were new here, as it were, that would have been a bit more of a blocker. So it's annoying. Anyway, let's refresh and get rid of that big red background, which is, I don't know if anyone else does that to know that CSS is working, but just, I mean, it's really, can't miss it. Whichever way we go, by the way, I don't have a particularly slow laptop. It's like a pretty new MacBook. But CSS compilation, there's no CSS in it, unless it's Tailwind that's making that so slow. Oh, that's interesting. Because Tailwind's doing that thing where it generates the entire library and then it's no longer compiling it. So if I wonder if I pulled out Tailwind, if that would be quicker. Interesting. Okay, because that's slow to make a CSS change, then have to hit refresh. Although maybe it has some sort of hot reloading feature that I'm not using. All right, anyway. Click edit. Amazing. So now we have our description here. So let's just copy. Let's do a manual one to start with. So we're going to take our description and we're going to copy it into the rich description. And now what we can do is make some of this bold, and we can make the rest of it italic just so we can see, and then do some strikeout stuff and hit save. So we haven't actually tested this so far. So if we hit save, hopefully everything should go through. However, the one we're actually showing here is the description, not the rich text version. So let's actually show it. And if we remember, there was a doc somewhere that had what we needed to show. You just put you can just put the field out. Cool. So then we can go to our, well, we're looking at it in control panel, so let's do it there first. Control panel videos, video. So we've got video description. let's do the raw one first, or the plain text one, and then we'll show the rich description one underneath. So when we refresh this, we should see this, and then underneath we should see the same thing, but with the formatting in, which has not happened. That's from the show. It's video. We are just doing render video. Video. Rich description. Oh, it didn't save. Okay, great. It didn't save because we haven't added that attribute to the controller, I assume. So we need to go and say in the controller that we are allowed, what we're doing on the video, to change. Oh, let's do it here next to this one. The rich description. So again, we'll do the same thing. We'll just copy and paste this one, and we'll just make this top bit bold with some strikeout and some italics, just so we can see everything. And hopefully, if we update the video this time, amazing. So now we get this plain text version, which is the one we got from YouTube. And actually, if we look here, you can see in this one that we get a gap between like work and 0000. If I just cancel out of that, when we then cut back to here, we get work and 0000. That's because the text area is respecting new line characters and actually moving them down, but the browser isn't. So it's just ignoring them, and it needs to be told via HTML to create the new lines. So we could, if we wanted to keep showing this, we could actually just do a swap for the new lines and actually put in a BR, like a BR tag, and honor those. But I think what we want to do is probably just use the rich text version all the time on our site, and then maybe only have the raw version. Only have the raw version as for like version control or something like that. But that would be pretty straightforward. You could do it somewhere as simply as in the view. I think you can just do something like this. Can you do it as this? Oh no, because okay, maybe I'm way off. I would normally Google this, but I'm going to try and. Is there something like that? I just made that up. Okay, now I'm interested. So I'm gonna oh, that you could also just do oh, it's close. There's also a bunch of Rails methods that will get you there. Because then, oh yeah, so then you actually need to get it out as HTML. I think you can just do, you can do simple format, but I think if you do sanitize, it will get you there as well. Yeah. So now this is the raw text one, but it is respecting new lines. And then this is our rich text version, which has the new lines in by default because it's using, I don't know what it uses, simple format or whatever. Well, I can't do because it'd be more complex than that, which is coming from our gem. So you could even take out this one here and only have the rich text version. And then on our importer, I suppose we could import the text to both fields. So we have this service here, which does the importing. And so we can do channel.videos.create. We have a description here. I wonder if we can do like that. Will that work? Let's actually try. Let's try that actually. That's we can just make a new channel. So I'm interested to see if what is this ActionText test? Create a site, and I already have that open in a browser somewhere over here. So we can grab the YouTube channel ID, pop it in here, submit that random email address that we don't care about. Close, and then just a random password that we don't care about. Sign up for that. So our user account has been created, and then because we haven't set a background job up, we can just do this here. So channel.last ID is channel 24, and then we can just run the job and see if it will create these rich descriptions for us. Oh, seems to be okay. So we can possibly see here. We've got video.create, paper trail version create. It doesn't seem to be doing any action text create. Did I save it? Yeah, okay. I wonder if that works in the create API, or do I have to assign that as an attribute afterwards? I wonder if this works. Let's go take a look. So we've got sites 40, but it was channel was it? 24. Okay, so it's got no descriptions in whatsoever. Okay, sorry, because I took these out. Okay, so it's saving the description, but not saving the rich description. Okay, let's do that again. This is an interesting exercise. So if I do, sorry, I'm gonna move those up here. So there we go. So if I take this out, then create it, and then do another call. So let's make this video, YouTube video. I don't know. I'm not really going to worry about naming it. So just interested in this. So saved video, whatever, local video. Dot rich description equals video description. Saved video dot save. Just put a bang in there. So what I'm interested in is when I assigned the rich description on create, I wondered if ActionText would work with that and go and make the associated model. But it didn't seem to. So I wonder if we then create the model here, save an instance of it, assign it to assign rich description to the description from the video we've just grabbed from YouTube, and then save it again. I wonder if that will work. Again, I'm not using these things. I'm just messing around to see what we can learn. So let's do YT import test, and then go through and find our channel ID again. Yeah, another random user, another random password. Copy that because get. Great, and then we need to run the script again because we haven't got a background job running. The last ID is now 25. Let's see, are we now creating any? Doesn't seem to have worked either. We're not making any action text. Do we have to do that via the UI? This is kind of interesting. So the new one is 25. View control panel 25. Oh, same thing, the description has been saved. Rendering rich text content. Probably should have finished reading the docs, frankly. This is the story of this entire live stream. So it gets put into a cool little partial, which you get by default. Attachments we'll come back to in a second. void n+1. Yeah, I just want to check how can I assign something to. Oh, hey, the chat said, good morning, people. Sorry, I was totally in there. Rails has old model in memory without the rich text field, as in the console. How do you mean? Morning, by the way, or evening for Finian, because I know that you are on the other side of the planet right now. Wait, we've just changed our clocks here. Is it earlier for you or later for you? No, we've moved an hour closer to you. Okay, you're forward, aren't you? Restarting console and rerunning the import will probably fix it. Oh, because I'm not changing the import script. See, I said earlier in the stream, if you're having problems doing something on the in Rails, restart the server. The same thing applies to the console. Oh, in that case, I wonder if I could have done it with this original one. Well, now we might have to run this twice. Yeah, okay. So hang on, let me stop and go back to from what Finian has said. So I am running this script in the console because we don't have the background job running. However, because I'm running it in the console, if I change the code, the script has already been loaded into memory. So when I then run it, I just keep running the same code, whereas if you're doing something like a controller request, next week will be earlier here. So okay, you got daylight savings there as well. Every time you make a request, you kind of you get the latest version of that code, whereas if it's already been loaded into memory in the console, that won't happen. Now, it's incumbent upon you to remember that, and if you forget, and as in this case, you will stare blankly, as we all do from time to time. So don't worry about it like it's a thing. Hang on, let me just close this. We're going to go all the way back through this again, just because of my own sheer curiosity. I do want to get to the ActiveStorage side of this stuff. Test, who cares? And then we can go channel. Cool. And then we can just run this. Great. Okay, cool. So this is what we were looking for the first time. Apologies for that. That's a few lost minutes. Calling the association on create is absolutely fine. So in here, what we're saying is store the description as it comes from YouTube in the description field. Also store it in the rich description field. And then let's actually see. So because... okay, so that's interesting. So select ActiveStorage attachments. That's interesting that you get an ActiveStorage load with every ActionText rich text create. What is that doing? Is it trying? So it's looking for the embeds of this. So is there some sort of callback when creating an ActionText rich text that you have to go and process these somehow? So if you had imported something that contained an ActiveStorage record, does it need to go and do something with that? That's interesting. So why would that be interesting to people? Any time where you're seeing like gems or something make a database call on your behalf, you kind of want to consider things like n+1 queries, performance. So maybe you're going to import 1 million videos or something like that, and then each one of those might have 3 attachments or 3 embeds or something, and then if each import is going to then do 3 loads, you've suddenly got 3 million extra loads that you're not necessarily factoring in, which may or may not be a problem. It might not matter. But you can just go look. Like we could go look if we cared. So now, hopefully, we can go back to our incognito window, refresh this. So this is our site, but what we want is control panel. I think we're up to 26. Yes. So now, it's interesting that it came through and ActionText didn't process like the new lines and stuff. I wonder if you could presumably pass it a sanitized version or pass it some sort of like formatted version of this as well. Like you could do some stuff here. Like it's just taking it as raw text. It's not actually, when you're doing that create, it's not actually doing anything to turn that into HTML. Like there's no gap here between work and 0, 0. But if I press enter, I will create that. So if I cancel out, like it looks like it's unformatted because that's how I've imported it. But presumably I could just mess with it on the import and do what needed to be done here. It's not automatically saying, oh, well, it's got new lines, let's make those BRs or whatever it does. Which I assume is because that stuff happens in the editor here. And if you, I wonder what happens if you pass it invalid HTML. Like if you screw it up, I wonder, does the model verify that or does it just break when you try and render it? These are all things that aren't really important right now. These are just things that I would, if I was investigating that as a solution to use, I would just try and go and break it. Or if I was trying to write the import now and do more complex stuff, you can't guarantee that the third party, the other end of the your import script, is always going to send you good data. So how can you break it? Again, this goes back to what we're talking about, like QA and testing and things like that. Like how broken could it be before you get it when you import it into ActionText? So that's pretty cool. So and I'm assuming now, because we didn't turn this on, so let's just add some formatting here. And if we then just hit update, so we can see that we've got our new styling, we've got our line breaks and stuff like that. We've got this bold, but let's go and take a look at what we had said around the variants here, our paper trail version. So let's bump the font size up a little bit, make that easier to see. So here we've got item type video. Yeah, and I don't think I'm just really skimming that quickly. We've got description here, but the only thing that's actually changing is going to be like the updated that. So you're not actually storing on your audit anymore the change in the styling. So you would need to deal with that yourself. Because I think if you clicked on this title, maybe you do, so 332 route coding new. So this was the really unformatted, this is what the versions actually look like. Yeah, I think you're just getting the fact that it changed. So you're getting the fact that it got updated. So yeah, just stuff that you would need to consider if you would have potentially broken your restore functionality because your new description might not change. So that would be up to you. Cool. Okay, so let's take a look at files. So we had, I'm just going to jump this on in case this opens something onto the other screen. The desktop. Oh no, where did my little Sunday picture go? Hang on a second. I'm just going to bring this back. Where was it? Hang on a second. Here we go, Sunday.jpg. Cool, so now I think if I click that. Can I hide that? Yeah, cool. Okay, so I'm just going to do that again so I can close this. Right, so out of the box, I've done nothing to ActionText to make it support files or anything like that. But as if by magic, we can say, well, this video is so cool. What we want to do is add a picture of Sunday to it. Oops. In here. So I can click this. This is the same Sunday that we had for last week when we were doing ActiveStorage. And so this is the, so this is actually the stuff. Ooh, okay. Fancy. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so this is all built-in stuff. I haven't touched any of these things, and it looks ropey, but you don't. We could just fix that. That's fine. So when we click on it, our X button is presumably supposed to be there. That's fine. Which would remove it. Great. It has a little hover, which is the size, name and size, and that disappeared to be add caption. Okay. Test caption. Test. So I can click off that. That's still there. Great. Now let's see what happens when we update this. Amazing. Right. So we have the text has been changed correctly. Everything has worked, except our preview of our image didn't come through correctly. Why not? Where's that looking? What's it doing? Because if you remember, when we looked at ActiveStorage, that totally worked out the box first time, and we just got a real freebie. So it's looking at localized Rails ActiveStorage representations. Because if we, and what I mean by it worked out the box, if we go edit, oh, okay, works there. So is it the partial we're using to render it? And what I mean by that is if we just swap the thumbnail out, and pick Sunday as well. So you're gonna have two versions that far. Click update video. See, this one worked. So we added that in the partial a couple of streams ago, and that was in video. It was just the underscore video. Right. So we had if video.custom_thumbnail.attached. Then we had URL for video.custom_thumbnail. I'll just show the thumbnail URL, and this is the one that gets imported from YouTube. It's just a URL that actually the actual file is hosted on YouTube as well. If not, if we've done the work to attach an attachment, get the URL for that, and that worked. So the one that is then being embedded in ActionText is not working. And where does this thing link? Where is that trying to go? That's going to Rails ActiveStorage blobs. And this other one is trying to get to ActiveStorage representations. What's the difference? Let's go and take a look at the code that renders that out. And there was a partial earlier that it told us about. Use ActiveStorage blob. So has it got figure class attachment around this? Yes, figure class attachment, attachment preview, attachment JPEG. So that's all the stuff that's coming from this partial. If blob.representable image tag blob.representation resize to limit. Okay, so representation. So let's see if we can get it working using the code that we're using from from here. So let's see if this works. What we've got, image tag blob. And here we can do, oh, we can keep it as image tag. We don't actually need to make that. So it can be image tag, and then it just wants a URL, I guess. Be video.custom_thumbnail, and this one would just be blob. Oops, bog. Blob. Is that enough? Will that get us there? Right, that would get us there. Now, okay, so image tag URL, so URL4 is working and .representation is not working. And is that because of something that we don't have on our side to do the automatic representation stuff? So what is actually coming back? Do we get a 404? Do we get that the content is not right? 500, okay. So luckily we are the server, so we can go and take a look at what we are passing That happens if we just try and go to that URL. Open image in new private tab. Cool. And we get cannot load such file mini magic. So this is presumably trying to generate something. Right, so does URL4 just go and get you the original, whereas representation is presumably trying to do something to the original? Like with mini magic, it's trying to say, make a new cool little thumbnail or something on the fly. And do we not then have mini magic installed? So where do we want to start? Do we want to just see if someone has solved this problem with this error message? Oh, I'm in my incognito window. So I'm presuming someone is going to say, and okay, I really hope that this is the answer to this question, which would really be on theme for this week's stream. The answer in that is, damn it, restarting the server solved it. Okay, let's give that another run. God, I hope that's the answer. So I just want to check we are back using the blob.representation. This is the error we're having. This is the file we're having a problem with, and we should end up with two Sunday pictures. Oh no, good. Okay, good. It didn't fix it. Okay, well at least we have got a real problem. Okay, so what did people other say then? Adding gem mini magic to your gem file, restart your server. Ah, okay. So did we not add that as part of our? That not come as part of doing ActiveStorage? Okay, great, excellent. Okay, so no, I think we skipped it because we didn't install ActiveStorage. We did the most basic thing and did the docs that said do the migration and everything else is kind of built in. And then there was something in the docs that said, hey, if you want to do variants, use this stuff. Now this is use ActiveStorage variant gem image processing, and I think I remember something in the docs that was they had moved from one to the other. I can't remember which one was up to date. Bearing in mind the code is trying to get to mini magic, let's ignore the commented out version here and install gem mini magic. So I'm going to kill the server and I'm going to kill the console as well. And we're going to do bundle install. And then we're going to restart the server. You know you're really doing your due diligence when you just grab like the rando Stack Overflow answer and assume it'll work. Start the server. Okay, so let's go back. A different error. That's pretty cool. Magic Mogul 5 resets to limit. Right, yeah, I should have gone to check. Maybe image processing was the latest one. So resize to limit is coming from that partial, I think. Sorry, I'm jumping around a lot. Yeah, so here, that's basically asking it to do that, but is resize to limit because it was using the image processing gem? Like, was there some sort of thing in ActiveStorage that we need to care about? I'm just going to jump out of this incognito one because it's annoying. Let's go and take a look back at the ActiveStorage docs really quickly to see what the most up-to-date version ActiveStorage variant, I guess. This is going to take us straight into the API. Variants rely on image processing. By default, images will be processed with image magic using the mini magic gem. So is that just okay? So me trying to be too fucking smart for my own good. Should have just done this. It's version locked. let's just do what we're told. Let's just leave that as is and then see if it works. I'm sure anyone watching this is Phineas here this morning. I'm sure everyone deploying this week had a huge amount of fun with bundle install. I managed to avoid all of the hassle this week with all of the gems getting yanked and breaking rails, but I hope you were all able to sail through it fairly smoothly. Or like me, we're working on something else altogether and didn't have to do it. Or didn't have to think about it yet. But I think they've fixed it in core. So or the core team have done something. Okay, so now we've done as we would probably should have done to start with, as we were told. And oh, it's in our incognito, isn't it? Yep. So over here, we now want to see an image here. Super exciting. Okay, cool. So this is actually being resized on the fly by our fancy new gem. So we could, so resize to limit is, are we saying it's in the gallery? No. It's 102.4%. So could we do something like, if we just made it really tiny, like a tiny little. Oh, okay. Super cool. So this goes back to what we were saying about you can use third-party services. ImageX, Cloudflare has one where you only store the original image, and then you can ask for a variant from a third-party service. FileStack has one I've definitely used. They usually like the CDN orientated, so they're usually because like the CDN will handle it. FileStack and like Upload Care or one of the other ones, and ImageX, they have really cool APIs where not only will it give you resized versions, but it will give you loads of other cool stuff. So you can be like, I want it in black and white. I want you to focus on any faces. So when you like crop to face or crop to people and stuff like that, as well as doing it in, like some really cool APIs for that stuff. So, but this one is built into Rails into that gem, and it's doing it on the fly. And if you remember, that was one of the issues that we bumped into when we were doing the ActiveStorage stuff, which is that if you then need a CDN to cache that specific version, but you're doing your variants at your end, that's something that we need to look at. But there was a proxy that I never dug back into that you could now do at the ActiveStorage level, which will go and get the original from the CDN. So those are loads of like performance-y things. If you're just working on a small app that only has a few users, like just use the off-the-shelf stuff. If you're serving a lot of images, you probably care about the bandwidth, like how big are the images, what is the energy you're having to do to go and do those resizes if they're huge, how quickly are they happening, what are the resources that you need to have to maintain them, etc., etc. Cool. Okay, so that's all free of charge, and I'm basically taking it for granted that here we're using the local storage for ActiveStorage. It's just storing it in a file in the repo. But I'm taking it for granted that if I plugged in an S3 bucket, this would just work, quote unquote, just work. And I'm assuming we would get some sort of UI in the editor as well for like an upload, or I wonder if it just does the thing where it shows you the local version and then frantically does the upload in the background. That would be interesting as well. So that is ActionText and ActiveStorage working together. Let's swap out on our channel's show view the new rich text version. So this is channel show. So we now want to show, keep doing that, rich description. So now in our public facing world, cool style stuff happening. So this goes back to the idea of like this app is ostensibly allowing people to like customize to build a web page for each of the videos they've pulled through from YouTube that YouTube won't give you. It doesn't give you styling and things like that. Actually, and we could also do the same thing. If we do the video here, we could do the same logic here. Again, you might not. You got video. If if video.custom thumbnail attached, and then you're passing back these URLs, you probably don't want to have to do that in the view every time. So you probably want to put that logic in one place to only ever bring back the correct URL for a video wherever you're asking for it. Now, whether that's in a presenter, whether you're doing it using view component, whether you put something on the model, wherever you put it, just that's something you probably don't want to put in a bunch of places. He says just copying and pasting it over because I don't care right now, but I care in the real world. So now we have our Sunday thumbnail, and then we have the Sunday that we have popped into the tricks editor as well. So let me go back and change my code here. So this should be like full size. Oh, the actual image. I thought we were cropping that one down. I think this is actually genuinely just the size of the image. Fair enough. Okay, cool. So that actually took longer than we're at. Oh god, we've done this for a really long time. Okay, so it's around 16 minutes. So I wanted to get to stimulus-y stuff. Let's come out of that one. So the API backend development needs a separate endpoint for uploading files that create ActiveStorage blobs and returns its attachable SGID. Okay. So there's stuff for associations in there. I'm just looking back through the docs to see what else ActionText stuff we skipped over earlier. Right, there's some really powerful stuff by the looks of it, of actually spitting these out. Just reading through this, uses user partial, something like this, to render a different partial, define user to attachable partial path, and declare that partial. The user instance will be available as the user. Right, okay, so you can customize the appearance of individual attachments per model. So we could do stuff to a video's rich description, or we could do stuff to a user's bio or a user's, I don't know, whatever we wanted, and have them appear differently. And there's just docs for all that stuff there. Okay, I don't really have any use for that stuff there. So what I was actually wondering is if you get, when we looked at the ActiveStorage stuff, we had, it had events that you could get into from, it's like direct uploads. Yeah, so it was direct upload via Java. So direct upload start, direct upload initialize. Are these also still coming from the version? I was going to say, are these versions coming from the ones in ActionText? It turns out. Okay, why is this showing? Oh, I thought this was actually going to show us the answer to the question. I thought this was going to show us importing those files into ActionText, but it's just importing them below. So if you look, they've actually removed the file button from the ActionText box there. But I'm assuming we would still get these events, so we could do stuff in Stimulus. Like you could implement. There's no way I'm gonna have time for that. I was gonna say, could you kind of implement this UI that's in this animation here? So as you drag your video or photo, or whatever, into the text editor, that's doing some sort of upload in the background. You could then swap that UI out. I think that's going to be beyond the complexity of what we have time for. Because I want to get some of the Stimulus stuff. The other Stimulus thing I had mentioned at the start was the concept of the kind of like I call like autocomplete, but like type ahead thing that we saw originally in this Rivet site, which is that when people went to type in the name of their YouTube channel, you'd start typing like Sunday, SUND, and then it would like suggest YouTube channels to you, and that would probably swap out this UI here of needing to know the ID. If you could just below put a text box, and then as they start typing the name of the channel, you could then grab that via a stimulus controller. So you would use the on change, I guess it is, from the React one. I'm assuming it's on change. And then if there are more than 4 characters in there, go and hit the YouTube channel search API, bring back the results, and update that with putting a list of the results underneath. And then if there's a click on one of those, because in Stimulus, you're actually sending the HTML back, you would fully insert that HTML. So you'd actually, and then you would presumably then have on the HTML you sent back, have another stimulus action that when you clicked on it, it then looked for the target of this text and filled that in with the ID and swapped everything out. Okay, yeah, so we could... Oh, yeah, we're never going to be able to build that now. Sorry, the ActionText stuff took longer than I thought. I wonder if there's like something we could look at instead. Is there an stimulus... What have people got? Like autocomplete? People call them typer heads. They always have different names. Stimulus autocomplete. Oh, there's like 2. This is a tiny stimulus controller to make a selection from a list results from the server. Okay. To use the autocomplete, you need to use some markup. Oh, so you could... Oh, wait, maybe we could even... Oh, you just get a simple list back. Okay. But we could wrap the YouTube API in our own endpoint. So we could make the request to us. Then we could go have our server make the request to YouTube, bring it back, and then format it how we wanted. I don't know why you'd do that. You could just make it direct, but... I suppose you wouldn't need to put your key in the UI if you didn't want to then. The component makes the request. So I actually want to see how much... One of the things I was really interested in is how much you end up with on the DOM, like in your HTML. Especially if we're going to be looking at Tailwind next week and the week after. Maybe the week after. So this is what you... Okay, this repo is a minimum example of how to use the library. Okay, not a lot. And that's just using the basic one. Sorry, I'm just... Okay. And where's... so let's actually take a look at what's the actual controllers look like then. I haven't really looked at any... Wait, what's MJS? Am I an idiot? What's MJS? Do I not know MJS? ECMAScript. Oh, for modules? Oh, interesting. Okay. What's the difference between JS and MJS? Node.js's native module system is CommonJS. It has experimental support for ES6. Using MJS file extension is one way to trigger that support. Oh, okay. Interesting. So I think I've just always had the build to just do that for me, I guess. Oh, it was controversial, it says. When Node added support for native ES modules, it controversially introduced the MJS file extension to differentiate the two and prevent applications from breaking. Some developers informally refer them. Okay. For clarity, as for devs humans, it's easy to distinguish between a module file and a normal JavaScript file because it's not always easy to determine even if you examine the code in the file. There are also performance benefits from... Okay, just the answer is JavaScript, is what Matt said. Okay, it doesn't really matter to me right now. So this goes back to then what we were looking at last week, which is where targets and values are the things that you have to define in your stimulus controller that you can then use on the DOM. So we've got input, hidden, and results, and we've got values, submit and enter, URL, and min length. Connect is what happens when the, this is like a test for homework from last week. Connect is what happens when the component is, what's it called? Not a component, that's React. HTML, when the DOM stuff is rendered out and the default JavaScript JS grabs it and says, yeah, I got you, and I recognize the controller you're trying to connect to. And then when it does it, when it wires the two up, it calls connect. And then this code runs and runs. Everyone was being really helpful last week. One of them runs once. I think connect runs once. And then there's another bit of code that I can't remember that could potentially run more than once. No, initialize run once and connect runs every time it connects. That was right, I think. Or the other way around. Okay, so this true, this input type. Yeah, and so then we got this built-in API. We defined a target called input, and then we got this API which was input target, input targets, and has input target, I think. Same for hidden, same for results. So this then defines. Oh, okay. So this is interesting. So this is doing add event listener for the input target in here. So is this so that you don't then need to add these on the DOM? I know that we kind of drifted off topic of like, I was hoping to implement something in Stimulus this week, but I don't think we're going to have time because I have to go and do some nonsense. But and next week I really do want to get into Tailwind stuff because I just can't, like, it's getting hard to see what's going on in this stupid app. But I didn't really want to leave the Stimulus stuff because I think it's really interesting and I think I want to work with it. I want to do something with it. I just don't want to focus on. So I think something like having an autocomplete would be a really interesting example. So it's interesting to see that you're adding event listeners here. I think I probably would have assumed from reading those docs last week that you would define all of those on the DOM, but I don't know why I would assume that. That doesn't make any sense. And I'm guessing the difference here is that this is like a library that people are importing, and so you only need to give them the things on the DOM that they actually need to mess with. And other than that, everything being in here is taken care of is great. Because you could do on... You could have defined this on the actual... on the actual input, I think. I haven't actually built anything in Stimulus, so I have no idea. And then what else is this doing? If type of autofocus. That's doing something to handle what autofocus does. So then it has these methods: sibling, select, on key down, and these are just triggered by these. So basically when on key down is happening, it's just calling this to on key down. So this is just what you want to happen when that thing happens. And you could name these whatever you wanted. These are just named conveniently for the method. But this syntax is just looking for a method. You could call it handle key down would be like a Reacty naming thing that you see. Then what do you want to do on each of these? Fine. So when it's doing the arrow down, for example, this dot select. So what does select do? Is it just updating state in this? So select target 4 to It's changing the way it looks. The CSS class, changing the ARIA attribute. No, it does actually change the active descendant. Okay. Then scrolls into view. Okay. If you hit enter, is it just doing select then? And this dot commit. Oh, I say is commit different to select. So commit is like, select is like, yeah, I think I want this one. Is commit, yeah, make it this one. Right, okay, and then text value is, right, yeah, okay, so select is clicking down a list, like, or like next, and then when you hit enter or click on it, you're doing a commit, and then that is actually doing the setting of the value on the input target. And tidying everything else up. Okay. Identify options, hide and remove options. Fetch results would be where we go and get the YouTube stuff. And then this is allowing it to take a URL, but then obviously you need the whatever to come back in a format that you understand. Oh, in this case, it is literally passing the HTML back. So again, you could make it a call to your own application and then have that application go and get the stuff from YouTube if you wanted to. Or you could just write a custom one for YouTube. Maybe enclose and extract value. Okay, yeah, just for time, we're at 90 minutes for this morning, so I think we're going to wrap things up and talk about next week. So I think I just want to put it on the agenda to do stuff with Stimulus. Like this all makes sense. And I'm just coming to this from React really. And especially then coming via those turbo frames and turbo stream demos that we did in the action cable stuff. Like I'm just really interested in building stuff like this because the React version of this stuff is just so complicated sometimes. And you're not really interacting with the DOM half the time. You're kind of dealing with these data structures that then kind of get transmogrified magically into it, maybe 5 components up. And I just find it less fun. Like I just find that stuff less fun. Like it's cool. You can do some really super cool, powerful stuff. But I don't hugely enjoy that stuff as much. But that's, it's cool. I don't dislike it. I prefer building simpler things with this. So let's talk about next week instead. Let's jump back to this other view. All right, cool. So I'm going to try and remember to do some posts so that people don't think we're going to look at any Ruby or any Rails specifics. But what we're going to do is, because I haven't had any time to look at the UI in midweek stuff, and I keep saying that I will, and I realistically that's just not going to happen. So what we're going to do is look specifically at Tailwind stuff and build out that front end. Maybe we'll look at working with Sketch as well. Probably not, because I think the point of Tailwind is that they've kind of just made design decisions for you and you just use it. And if you don't like them, then you have to work harder to override them. But if you just kind of roll with their kind of decisions, then you make your life easier. Maybe we'll get back into the view component stuff, because my understanding is that the reusable aspect of Tailwind in terms of putting everything in those DOM elements means that if you reuse the components as well, you'll only have to build things once or twice. So maybe we have like a form or like a form field component for each one, for like a text box, a label, and then like a component with a text box and label, and or maybe just one that's just text field and then that has a label attribute and things like that. I really can't remember how you do that in View Component. We only looked at it for a week. And maybe we look to build up a set of components that we can then use to build the rest of the UI. So we have like a, I don't know, like the navbar stuff, in control panel, maybe we can have a breadcrumb, general stuff. And how does Tailwind help us build that? How does View Component work with that? Where does that fall apart? What does it look like? And how much can we brand it? And when do we need to use custom CSS if we do at all? And what are the pros and cons? Presumably a lot of it is the idea of having the media queries accessible in the CSS styles, which I haven't really worked with. So I think that's why I keep bumping into it. I'm just like, oh, this would be quicker if I just styled it, myself now. Like, it's basically like a style tag or something. But if you actually want that to change over a set of viewports widths, that's, I think, where a lot of the advantage of Tailwind can come in, because you can be like, well, I'm just going to define the rules for that here in the HTML rather than having to go and have a corresponding CSS files. I'm assuming maybe you don't, but that you will lose a lot of flexibility of like, oh, well, actually, I want this one button here to go at like 537 pixels and it needs to jump 2 to the right because it just doesn't quite look right. I'm guessing you just sacrifice all that stuff and say, screw it, make it look right. Or like, go with what Tailwind suggests. So we're going to do that. I'll try and remember to post on Twitter, that'll do, beforehand, to say that we're not going to do any Ruby on Rails stuff. And that is it. We'll look at all of that next week. Thank you to everyone who has jumped into the chat and anyone who is staying up late or watching this later on. And have a wonderful week, everyone. It's British summertime here in the UK. We've just lost an hour yesterday, but it's now actually sunny. So go outside and enjoy the sunshine. Have lovely weeks, and I will see you all for Tailwind stuff next Sunday. Bye.